What's the most unethical parenting hack, you know? Told our daughter that the kids' ears turn red when they lie, but only parents can see it. She would enter rooms with her hands covering her ears, and we knew we were in for a lie lull. Comment. When I was fake sleeping as a kid, I used to do the cartoon snoring noises, because I thought that's how you were supposed to sound when you sleep. My mom struggled to contain her laughter anytime she came into the room. To bust me for late night reading XD, I remember when I finally discovered how sleeping person actually sounds and looks like. After seeing my dad taking a nap, my mom came to bust me again, and she was so confused. And I even remember her being like, wow, she is actually asleep. I used to pretend to sleep by taking very deep and slow breaths. And then my mom told me that you actually take shallow, short breaths if sleeping normally. So I tried to do that, and then got too in my head about my breathing and started hyperventilating. Being a kid is a ridiculous experience. Story 2. Ensure your kids won't bother you by telling them to wake you up in an hour so we can start cleaning the house. They will do anything to avoid waking you. Comment. When you finally wake up, after they've been playing quietly so as to not wake you, you must continue the charade and ask them, why didn't they wake you up? Now you'll all have to clean another time. That'll drive it home and they'll let you sleep every time. I let the laundry build up and up, then once a week go to my bedroom with chocolate snacks, a hot cup of tea, and Netflix to fold the washing. I tell them anyone who comes in has to help. I don't see any of them the entire time. Unethical childing hack. Raised Catholic, church every Sunday. So, we'd time things and bring them breakfast in bed so that by the time they choked down burnt toast and soggy cornflakes, it was too late to make it to Mass. Worked best if you sent the youngest two in with the tray. Sometimes they were hungover enough, the very appearance of the tray prevented church. Years later, Mom and Dad would talk about how terrible those breakfasts were, but how it would have been mean to reject it. We didn't care if you liked it, we just didn't want to go to church. Story 3. My nephew refused to vacuum, so I told him the thing about the vacuum sucking up ghosts. I said that vacuuming kept houses from getting haunted. That's why haunted houses are so dusty. 10 years later, he is still a neat freak, and I feel responsible. Story 4. Saw this video on Instagram. When it's past their bedtime, Dad changes the language on the TV to Spanish. When the kids act confused, he says it must be because you're tired. Comment. If your toddler accidentally touches something hot, you have the opportunity to tell him many things. In the house are also hot and should be avoided. But when my cousin was a toddler, she had this happen in reverse. She learned that she shouldn't touch hot things, but never actually touched those things enough to associate the term with a sensation. So to her, the word hot meant thing I'm not allowed to touch for about a year. If you told her, don't touch that for any given item, she'd point at it and say, hot. Story 5. When my son was a baby, dude cried like a banshee, and he cried a lot. I was the bath giver, and it was especially bad in there due to the small space. So I went on Amazon and got myself some noise-muffling earmuffs, like what you'd use on a gun range or something. And it made the crying so much less stressful and easy to deal with so I could just focus on loving him without the noise grating my soul. Maybe not that unethical, but I've gotten negative reactions from some people when I told them about it. Comment. One of my stepkids cried and screamed 24/7 for months when he was a baby. This was way before me. And somehow the doctors missed the fact that he had a hernia. Drove my husband and his ex-wife nuts. I'm a pediatrician. I recommend noise-canceling headphones to every new parent. Just last night, I had a talk with a fellow advanced trainee on how important they are. I think they would prevent so many cases of child abuse. Edit. For clarity, noise-canceling headphones do not cancel out all of the noise of an infant crying. You can still hear people talking to you in a normal voice, but it does lessen the blow. And if you're holding a colicky baby, it's enough to not entirely go crazy. My sister wears loop earplugs to handle the noise her kids make. You can still hear, but it muffles ambient noise. I also use them for my autism in public. They're very discreet. I'm sorry you got shamed for it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of yourself so you can best care for your kid. Story 6. This may have worked better for me since one of the kids' parents has hearing loss, but I told my for-at-the-time nephew that I couldn't hear whining. But if he would like to try again in a different tone of voice, I could understand him better. Right now I could see his lips move, but that was all. He did an admirable job with modulation after that, and I got him what he'd asked for. Comment. My mate does the same thing, but tells his kids he can't hear them unless they use their manners. Works like a charm. I used to tell my son that screaming is just noise, but I can hear talking. Eventually said the same thing to my niece. She'd cry on cue. She was 6. When you scream, you're just making noise. If you talk to me, I can hear and understand you. It worked surprisingly well. Story 7. I got one. I fostered difficult teen boys. Obviously, their home life wasn't great, and they imitate some bullshit behavior. When I set boundaries, they don't like a lot of kids want to physically fight me, because that's the way they've learned to solve problems. Okay, so here's the unethical part. If they want it, I am the one. We glove up and go to the backyard. I block and dodge until they're gassed. They cry out of frustration, and we hug it out. I've gone to work with a shiner more than once. But the kids learn that no matter how bad you are, there's always someone badder, tough guys that don't make your problems go away, and a physical contest makes you feel better. My kids have been thrown out of school, foster homes, alternative learning schools, every program they've ever been in. Having an outlet for that energy and anger helps. But it's not exactly ethical to tell a kid if they want it, they can come get it. Comment. For what it's worth, I think any accusations of this being unethical are mitigated by the fact that you have them glove up and go in the backyard. Putting on boxing gloves is an important way to signify a context change that makes it socially acceptable to fight, spar. Swinging on a family member in the kitchen is always going to be considered domestic violence. But if you agree to glove up and spar, it's considered a sport. A lot of times, kids growing up in difficult environments get in trouble because they have a hard time understanding appropriate context for things because it wasn't modeled for them. Teaching them that there are appropriate outlets for the things they want to do is super important and helpful. Story 8. Friend at school's parents told him he was allergic to alcohol, which they said they found out when he accidentally drank some as a toddler. They told him he was in intensive care and nearly died. On his 18th birthday, they told him they made it up so he didn't drink when underage. Comment. For coffee, my grandma didn't mean to do this. She drank strong black coffee. It was gross, but she liked it. So I remember her letting me have a sip when I was like 5'0", and I've never had coffee since. It was awful. I'm grateful for that, though. I feel like she saved me a lifetime of spending money on coffee. Story 9. My kid went up 4 reading levels over COVID lockdown. Everyone thought I was really putting in a big effort with his reading. Truth is, I just turned on subtitles on the TV. Comment. While 3 out of 4 of us were independent readers from an early age, including my dyslexic sister, my brother struggled a lot when he was young and just overall had very little interest in reading, especially anything he had to read in school. So Dad bought Final Fantasy and other relatively text-heavy video games, specifically to give my brother things to read that would hold his interest, and things that had a practical, no, to a small child, use to him, such as figuring out his equipment. I'm sure some would find that unethical, just putting a kid down in front of video games, but I sure as hell don't, especially because Dad also read fairly advanced fantasy novels to us every night to further ignite that interest. My brother eventually became an avid reader of fantasy novels. He knew if he wanted to get the story, he had to read it. A lot of kids pick up a second language that way too, watching subtitled foreign television and movies. Story 10. I don't know if it's truly unethical, but don't react when your kid falls over. The first thing your kid will do once they have fallen is look to you, and if you panic, they'll panic and start crying. Comment. I know a parent that would just neutrally ask, "Alles noch dran?" German for, "Is every limb still attached?" And the kid does a short check and goes on. Story 11. My parents took advantage of my short-term memory. They'd give me a toy, wait until the new shine wore off, and I favored others. They'd hide it and regift it, and I'd be excited about it again. Comment. We do a version of this, but call it toy rotation. When they start getting bored of their toys that they have out, we pack them up and pull the other boxes out of their closet and unpack those. It's like Christmas all over again. No new toys, they're the same old toys, but they love it. We rotate them every month to 2 months. Story 12. I save all my tax office envelopes. They are a distinct color in the Netherlands. And every time I hear my child swear, he randomly gets a letter fining him X amount from the tax office. He then hands the money over, and I pop it back in his piggy bank when he's not looking. It works. Story 13. I pretended that certain foods, such as the skin on steamed salmon and broccoli, are incredibly delicious and would ask my kids if I could eat theirs. Other parents found it hilarious that my kids would be begging for slimy salmon skin and be delighted when I gave them cucumbers. Fun fact, most kids don't like broccoli because they have something, enzyme, that makes broccoli taste very bitter. Usually changes with time, but some adults keep it. Story 14. I'm not sure this qualifies as unethical, but my kids sure thought it did. When they were young, they had difficulty gaining weight. It wasn't that they weren't eating. Their metabolisms were just too fast. One of the things that doctors recommended was giving them milkshakes every morning. This would pack in the calories, but we realized it would also fill them up so they wouldn't get some other nutrients, and especially any fiber. I began adding chocolate-flavored protein powders and frozen spinach. Turns out frozen spinach is close to flavorless. One morning, they caught me throwing the spinach into the blender and had a fit. I told them this was the first time I tried it and promised not to do it again. The next morning, I added it anyway, as well as some chocolate chips, so they'd have a special treat as an apology. It was adorable having them come up to me and tell me it was the best milkshake I'd ever made with tiny green bits of spinach in their teeth. BW, they're now in their 20s and are nearly a head taller than me and my wife. Story 15. Not exactly unethical, but one way my mom got child me to stop crying was to rapidly cover and uncover my mouth, kind of like how people used to imitate Native Americans back in the day. The resulting noise I made never failed to make me laugh hysterically and calmed me down instantly. Mom's a real cheeky lady at it. Fix the tense sheesh. Story 16. Did you miss not having model rockets as a kid? Buy them for your kids. Buy all the toys you wish you had when you were a kid and enjoy them with or without your kids. Comment. Daddy, can we play now? Nope. Wait for Daddy to, make sure they're kid safe. What about now? Not yet. Did you even buy these for us or what? Oh, don't judge me. Story 17. If you want your toddler to do something they don't really want to do, then ask them a question where all possible answers involve them doing the thing. For example, when my kid was in the bath, they never wanted to get out when bath time was over. So I just asked, do you want to climb out yourself or do you want me to lift you out? Worked every time. Comment, this is not unethical. It is very good parenting. Toddlers have very little control over their lives, and being given a choice gives them feelings of autonomy, and choosing between two things feels manageable to them, where open-ended questions are too tough usually, and it avoids a power struggle which is easier on everyone. Story 18. If they lie to me, their tongue will turn purple. The hesitation when you ask them to show you their tongue if they've lied. Hack ruined when 3-year-old, youngest child, had them all sit in front of the mirror, tell lies, and check each other's tongues. Comment. Next time just say only adults can see the color change, due to their eyesight being more developed or something. Story 19. Just look at ads for children's medicine from the late 1800s to early 1900s to get the most unethical parenting tips imaginable. No matter what problem your kid had, there was some blend of opiates, cocaine, alcohol, cannabis, radium, and random plant extracts for sale, guaranteed to fix them right up. Story 20. So I think everyone knows the don't react initially if they fall down or appear to hurt themselves in some way trick. Mine goes a step further. Act like they may have damaged the thing they hit. Kids love breaking stuff. I diffused a bedtime knock last night in which my son smacked his head against the bed guardrail. I immediately commented that he must have put a crack in the bed, pointing out the already present seam between two boards of the guardrail. He was proud that he was able to do it. Then, of course, I noted that he'll have to be more careful so he doesn't break his bed, so that he wouldn't keep doing it. Got him from the verge of tears to grinning happily in 10 seconds flat. Story 21. Something that has only recently been pointed out to me as potentially unethical, pulling your kid's loose baby teeth out. My husband was horrified when I told him my siblings and I never had loose teeth for long, because once they were loose enough, one of my parents would just pull it the rest of the way out with their hands. Sure, it hurt, but the accidentally generous tooth fairy made up for it. I have 5 siblings, and my dad accidentally gave the oldest $20 one time. Grabbed the wrong bill. Of course, she bragged about getting so much money for it. So subsequently, all our teeth were quite valuable. They did manage to logically explain the value down to $5 a tooth. After your initial $20, but with 6 kids, it adds up LMFAO. Story 22. You're meant to read to your baby often, and from as early as possible to help with marriage development. But for a good 2 years, they won't understand what you're saying anyway. So instead of the same baby books over and over, I just scrolled through Reddit reading posts out loud. Story 23. It's okay to do little white lies to get your kid to listen. Sometimes explaining it the correct way still doesn't get through, for example. If your kid has a problem with mooning people, you can just tell them that they'll attract barking spiders that'll attack at the sight of said butt, and then, boom, no more mooning. Comment. My white lie is that Bluey is asleep. She'll be on when she gets up, but she doesn't bother you when you're sleeping, so let's not bother her. Doesn't always work, but it does enough that I keep the lie going. My mom would literally change the clock to show our bedtime, and then she'd be like, oh, 10 more minutes till 8:30, see? A guy at a bar got too wasted, so all his friends told him it was 2 a.m. and the bar was closing. They were able to walk him home safely and make it back before 11 p.m. It was very funny to see that trick work on an adult, though drunk adults are really just big toddlers. Story 24. I recently flew internationally with my toddler, and to keep him chill in the long security lines and customs lines, I would tell him if he didn't stay quiet, they wouldn't let him on the plane. And then once on the plane, if he started getting cranky, I'd tell him if he was too loud, they'd have to turn around and take him home. Made it through 12 hours total of flying with 10 min of crying. So I'm calling it a win. Story 25. My grandma tells the story of a lady she knew back in the day who, to make her baby eat everything she's given, would make it eat chili peppers beforehand. To this day, it hits me hard. Story 26. When the batteries ran out or were lost on a particularly annoying toy, my mom would tell us, "Oh, hon, I'm so sorry, but they don't make those kinds of batteries anymore." We would be disappointed and move on making our own noises for the thing, which was way more fun than the preset ones. Wasn't until I was much older, I won't say how old, that I realized batteries didn't change kinds like fashion brands. Also, when we lived in Europe, the winters were a whole lot colder than we were used to. So once we had all piled into the car and were heading to church, of course, we'd complain about the cold despite car blankets and being bundled to high heaven. So my mom would tell us there was a light on the dash that would tell her when she could turn the hot air on. So we'd ask about the light. There is no light. She would just watch the engine temp until it was warm enough to pump hot air into the van. I was also much older than I'd like to say when that clicked. Story 27. An acquaintance of mine will give his children unnecessary allergy relief medication to make them sleepy and get some quiet time. We're not friends anymore. Comment. My kid didn't sleep through the night for 14 months because of his allergies. So we were absolutely running on fumes. One night I came downstairs and said, I gave him his antihistamines. And my husband looked at me with pure horror and said, I gave him his antihistamines. We called the emergency line and they said, no need to worry, he'd just sleep. And we went to bed and got 6 unbroken hours for the first time in so long, and it was bliss. The temptation to do it again, oh my God. We never did, of course, because we're not psychos. Story 28. My kid's goldfish died while we were on vacation, and I was prepared to have a lesson about the transience of life and that all things eventually perish. Daddy, where's Mr. Fishy? Well, Boogie, sees worried, almost tearful little eyes. On vacation. Know how you and I went on vacation? So did he, and we're going to pick him up right now. Drives to pet shop. Boogie, I don't see Mr. Fishy anywhere. Do you? Daddy, he's right there. I can't believe I missed him. Why don't you check out some of the other stuff and I'll pay his room and board at the cashier? Story 29. Wow. I was just going to say that changing the words to a song you lovingly sing to a crying baby into horrific historical tortures you can think of that have to rhyme, though, makes you take out your frustration in a way that doesn't hurt the baby. Sounds horrifying to new parents when you suggest it, though. Story 30. If a kid is upset and crying, have them drink some water. It'll make you feel better. They can't cry and drink at the same time, and generally calm down quicker so you can actually figure out what's going on. Or they realize whatever they bumped doesn't actually hurt. Works great in a class full of 4-year-olds. Comment. I use this as a camp counselor all the time. Kid fell down, have some water, it'll make you feel better. Once they stop crying to drink, they're less likely to start again. And at an outdoor summer camp, it was never a bad thing to get them drinking more water. Related, we also gave the kids magic mints, Mentos, whenever they said they had a stomach ache. The mint can help settle an upset stomach, and 9 times out of 10, the kiddos were just homesick and needed a few minutes to calm down with an adult. Same thing with M&Ms and minor injuries. If the chocolate distracts a kid enough to forget they're hurt, they'll be fine. If they keep sobbing through a mouthful of M&Ms, you might have an actual problem. Giving kids candy to get them to quiet down and forget they're hurt isn't unethical if it works. Story 31. Illusion of choice. We can have X or Y. What do you want? This might not be unethical, depending on how you feel about it and how you use it. In the end, children, just like adults, want to be treated with respect and decency. They want to know their input is valued. Story 32. Not sure how unethical this is, but here we go. I have 2 older siblings. My parents didn't know the best way for them to help my oldest sibling how to read. My other sibling, middle child, they did the Smarty game. Smarties are a type of sweet, by the way. Every time they got a flashcard word right, they got given a Smartie. For me, though, every time I got a word right, all 3 of us would get a Smartie. So my siblings used to chase me around the house just before the game with the flashcards, making sure I knew what the card said because they wanted the sweets. It doesn't have to be Smarties, or other sweet for that matter, but the bribery worked well, it seems. Story 33. My daughter loves medicine, like children's Tylenol, amoxicillin, etc. She loves to take medicine. She used to ask me for medicine all the time. If her sister was sick, she was always right there waiting for her dose of medicine. Well, it got to the point that she was asking for medicine when she was completely healthy too. Obviously, I can't dope my kid up with medicine 24/7 because she enjoys the taste. So I told her that medicine only tastes good when you're sick because it's meant to help you. When you're healthy and you take medicine you're not meant to take, it tastes bitter and will make you sick because you're not supposed to be taking it. So I gave her a tiny dose of apple cider vinegar instead of Tylenol when she kept asking when she wasn't sick. She doesn't ask for it unless she's sick now because it tasted so bitter when she felt fine, and it tasted much better when she didn't feel good. Story 34. My mother used to tell us the shop wasn't open for whatever we want if she forgot or didn't want to go. I swear that I wouldn't do that to my children. What did I do? I had to do it once or twice. Story 35. When one of my nieces is begging for something in the store and is throwing a fit, ill say, "Do you want a picture of you holding it so Santa knows you want it?" calms them right down. Kids are stupid. Now please excuse me while I go wishlist these Steam games I can't afford. Story 36. Blame them for your investments. I bought hella electronic music gear just saying that my kid might enjoy and get into it. She plays with it while I code. New car? I think child's name would be more comfortable in a new car. Story 37. My niece believed that when the ice cream truck made music, it was out of ice cream. She believed it so much, she played that way with her American Girl doll ice cream truck Lowell. She figured it out around 9 years old. Story 38. When my youngest niece was tiny, she used to be an insomniac. Couldn't sleep for anything. But then I pick her up, walk with her, go about my day with a sleeping 1-year-old on my chest. Then one day I was at work, and it was nap time for the little one. Her mom calls me. "She won't sleep. What do I do?" When I told her to find some heartbeat sounds, kiddo dropped right to slumber. So did everyone else. Moral of the story. Heartbeat sounds make everyone sleepy. Story 39. My mom used to take me to my grandparents' house when my brother and I were playing up. My grandpa would give me plastic scissors and tell me it's my turn to cut the lawn and my brother a brush and bucket of water. Tell him he needs to paint the fence, but if it dries, the paint doesn't work. So start again. We would be out there hours. One time, he asked us to dig a hole in his garden for a tree, came out hour and a half later to tell us it's in the wrong place and we need to move the hole. TBF, it gave my mom the break she needed and kept us out of trouble. Story 40. If toddlers have a major tantrum about something, take away their soother. Then they'll have a tantrum about wanting their soother. Then give it back and they stop crying. It's like switching them off and on. I would avoid doing it though. Story 41. Oh, my mom was full of unethical parenting. I think that's the only kind of parenting she knew how to do. Her least ethical thing, though, was probably the one where she'd go have a nap and tell me to wake her up at a certain time, and then come up screaming and swinging anytime I woke her up. But then also yell at me if I didn't wake her up. But then also yell at me if I woke her up by throwing something at her or poking her with the broom or yelling or anything else I could do at a safe, non-punchable distance. I tell you, it takes talent to make a child terrified of the concept of someone else being asleep, but goddamn, she did it. Story 42. Our youngest son co-slept with his mother and I until he was 5. Easily the dumbest thing we ever did. Trying to wean him off of that put his life and our sanity in danger. Hours a night were spent trying to get that little devil to fall asleep. My wife introduced him to the sleep fairy. A lot like the tooth fairy, only SF helps little boys and girls sleep in their own bed. She found a small wooden treasure box, helped him paint, chai, decorate it, and told him every night he sleeps in his own bed, the SF will give him a gift. SF left little Lego people, small candies, and other small toys and treats for a month. It got to where he looked forward to sleeping in his own bed. After a month, the SF wrote a heartfelt message to the boy, letting him know how proud of him they were, and it was time for her to go and help other little boys and girls sleep in their beds. Son is now 14, and he still has the SF treasure box in his room that he never leaves. Story 43. Showing your children photos of people with meth mouth and saying, "See this guy, he doesn't clean his teeth. This is what happens if you don't brush properly." Story 44. I don't have kids, but the best hack I've heard is to play the New Year's Eve countdown from a country in a different time zone. Doesn't matter if it's a different language. Kids down care. They get fireworks, MA countdown, and get to stay up late, but are actually in bed by 9 p.m. Ahaha, edit. It's not unethical per se, but felt like it could be suitable for this thread. Story 45. Not a parenting hack, but definitely unethical. I used to babysit my brother since I was the oldest daughter. My youngest brother was a hellion with extreme ADHD. It was always a challenge for whomever was watching him. He's a great and smart adult now, but I would always have the easiest time. I would tell him to do something, and he would eagerly jump to complete whatever it was. One day, my mom asked me why he listened to me so well. I had told him that there were monsters that lived in the closet, the Chihuahuas, and if he was bad, they would come and take him away. It only took a couple of fake growls and slight convincing, and he became the poster child for perfect behavior. I'm not proud of what I did, but man, it really worked. Story 46. Teaching your 6YO daughter how to throw a proper punch, then sparring with her for a bit, reduced her classroom bully who terrorized everyone to a much better behaved young man, at least around her. Story 47. This is a really old school but interesting parenting concept my great-grandmother told me. Growing up, she was the oldest of 12 siblings in an immigrated Italian family. Every night at the end of dinner, her dad would pour all the kids a shot glass of wine. None of the kids grew up to abuse alcohol because drinking small amounts in moderation was instilled in them since childhood. Obviously, this is considered unethical today, but for 1920s standards, it's pretty genius emo. Story 48. I told my kids it's illegal to cuss, drink, smoke, or kiss until you're 18. It worked until my oldest was in middle school. when she heard a kid cussing at school and tried to get a teacher to call the cops. Story 49. My grandmother used to go around the house with a needle when my mom were like 2 yo, and every time she or her brother's sisters tried to touch an electrical outlet, my grandma would sting them with the needle fast so they link the outlet to a hurtful experience. None of the kids would go near an electrical outlet again. It worked like a charm. The first day they discovered the outlets, they would never try to touch them. Story 50. My mom did this and I'll never do it with my kid, buying them big ticket items to be used as a control device. Here's the latest gaming console. If you cough funny, you lose it for a month. After 2 to 3 items like this, I just stopped thinking I had it. Be home by 5. Got home at 5:02 with a very valid reason why I was late. No such and such for 2 weeks. My sister's 2 years older than me. Parents got her a beater car when she turned 16. Just shy of 2 years in high school with the car. Think she used it 12 times in the whole 2 years. Like shutting the front door too loud would get it taken for a week. When I turned 16, they tried the same told them to keep the car. Story 51. I let my kid taste beer when she was 2-3 years old. And when I say taste, I mean she put a finger in the glass and taste it. Of course, she didn't like it. Then, every time I was drinking something I didn't want my kid to drink, like carbonated soft drinks that are full of sugar, I always told her it's beer. I would reinforce that belief every time I would drink beer, letting her finger test. She reached 5.5 years old, still not wanting to taste Pepsi, Sprite, Fanta, etc. And I hope I can keep the charade going for as long as I can. She did taste Pepsi once, but she said it's too sweet and preferred her apple juice, but I still don't want to risk it. Story 52. Works for about age 2 to 5. When they're near a birthday, tell the kid you'll take their birthday away if they don't shape up. Oh, 4-year-olds don't act like this. Maybe you aren't ready to turn 4. You may just have to stay 3 this year. Story 53. As a kid, my mom, a single mother, taught me how to pee. I was always scared of the toilet, so she taught me how to go pee outside next to a tree as we lived in the middle of nowhere, and I thought it was the greatest thing that I could pee where I wanted. Well, I didn't understand that I couldn't just go pee in the Walmart parking lot in the middle of the road down the drain. It became a problem because I wouldn't go to the bathroom, I just went where I wanted to in public. So my mom's solution was informing me of the winky police. If caught, I would be taken to jail and they would cut it off after she told me that it never happened again. Story 54. I told my daughter her ears turn red when she lies. Now she'll hide her ears every time she's lying. She's 7, so not sure how much longer I'll get from this before she works it out, but it's sure been handy. Story 55. No unethical, but advantages to everyone. From the time they were a year or so, I would always knock on their doors if I wanted to go in their bedroom. Always. Turns out, they do as they see. They always knock on our doors before they come in. Gives us valuable time to cover our naked arse in bedclothes. Story 56. When me and my little sister were very young, we saw a huge bird circling the skies above our backyard. We ran inside and told our dad that we saw a vulture. We live in Norfolk, it was just a big crow. He told us if we laid real all and quiet like we were dead, it would land close to us and we would be able to catch it. And if we caught it, we could keep it as a pet. We laid in the middle of the yard for hours, whispering to each other while he sat inside drinking beer and watching football. Well played, Dad. Story 57. My daughter no longer watches Gabby's dollhouse in the mornings because Gabby is sleeping. She also does not watch during the week because Gabby is at school. Story 58. I told my kids that all the kids' TV presenters take a holiday over the same 3-week period, so there was no EBBs or other kids' TV on. That meant we could watch 3 weeks of interrupted Tour de France coverage. When the tour was over, the presenters came back from their holiday, worked like a charm. Story 59. My son would not hold my hand in a parking lot when he was about 3. So I told him the little black oil spots were kids who let go of their parents' hand. He held my hand after that. On a funny note, we were laughing about it not too long ago. He's 14 now, and he said, I still find myself looking at oil spots in parking lots and thinking, geez, that must have been a small kid, fat kid, tall kid. Oh, there's twins, that kid must have been running. Kind of like making shapes out of clouds. Story 60. I was told that parents of kids who go to daycare give their kid Tylenol, Advil before daycare if they have a fever to buy themselves 0.5 workday. I've never done this myself, but apparently it's a thing. Story 61. When my daughter still believed in Santa Claus, I would pretend to call or text Santa when she misbehaved. I even had Alexa call Santa once because she thought I was bluffing, and Alexa did try to call him Lomeo. I had no idea Alexa could even do that. Story 62. I think my favorite was the quiet game. When kids are being loud and noisy, tell them we're going to play the quiet game. Whoever can stay quiet the longest wins. Story 63. I had a coworker tell me this, and she was the one of the nicest people I knew, which made it even funnier. Her parents told her growing up that the sugar packets at the table at restaurants were for dessert, but only good children were allowed to have them. I am still laughing about that, and I haven't worked with her in like 8 years. Story 64. My son was 2 weeks shy of 5 years of age and was acting up a lot. I finally told him that I would not allow him turn 5 because he was acting like a 4-year-old. We had this conversation a number of times with him crying, "No, mommy, I don't want to be 4 anymore." My response was always the same. I need to see 5-year-old behavior before I will allow you to be 5. We still laugh about it today. Story 65. The not a parent, but I have worked with kids for 26 years. I usually don't condone lying to kids, but sometimes bending the truth is necessary. One night of childcare, it was storming, and my little was scared of the thunder. So in a moment of desperation, I told her that thunder is the rain farting. She thought it was hilarious and wasn't afraid of thunder after that. Story 66. Until they can tell time, little kids have no concept of how long minutes or hours are. When it was getting time to leave the park or wherever, I would always ask them how much longer they wanted to stay. Whatever their answer, I would say, "Okay," and set my timer. 5 minutes later, and the timer goes off, so they hear the bell, and they know their 2 hours are up and it's time to leave. Story 67. Schedule your shopping pickup for 2+ hours after you have had fun doing something for yourself on your own. My kid and partner would rather pick lint off the carpet than go with me. Okay, I hope there isn't a line, and I can get my stuff quickly. You already purchased it, and it is waiting for you when you are ready for it. Have a fun day of bookstores, coffees, movies, nails. Story 68. Told my nephew, 6, that the grape juice he was drinking was home-brewed super wine that would make him drunk with one sip. He chugged the entire thing, and then promptly began acting so drunk that he just went in his room and fell asleep. Kids are walking placebo effects. Story 69. We tell the kids that the tooth fairy only buys clean teeth because she eats them and no one wants to eat dirty teeth. It's also how we explain that the tooth fairy still needs so many teeth after all these centuries. Story 70. If you don't want to go into a store with your little kids, tell them that it's closed for kids at that age. My kids would want to go to the Disney store, and being in there, sometimes it's just overwhelming for me. I used to tell them that it was closed for 2-year-olds, so the older kids could get their turn in the store. Story 71. Not a parent, but a godmom. I'll pay you 10 euros for every book you read with over 150 pages in them. Godson thinks he's so sneaky getting cash for reading books now. He used to hate reading. You're welcome, little bookworm in the making. Story 72. My daughter isn't a big reader, and I'd like her to be. So this summer, I offered her a penny a page for reading. She also earns extra screen time. I told her there is no limit, meaning that if she reads 100,000 pages, I will absolutely give her $1,000. So far, I'm in for about $7, and a lot of satisfaction seeing my daughter starting to like reading. Story 73. Telling kids that Easter baskets, etc. in the store are not really for sale. It's just for show. Still use it with the teens. Also hiding change or dollars in a messy room and telling kids to clean the room. It is like a treasure hunt. Story 74. I critique tantrums. You call that a tantrum. You're not even flailing your arms. Stomp with the bottom of your feet. It makes more noise and is less likely to hurt your feet. You need to roll back and forth. No, with more energy. Your grandma taught me. Do I need to get her to show you how to have a proper tantrum? Because this is sad. Story 75. We waited until each kid found their favorite stuffed animal, the one they cannot sleep without. We then went out and bought 2 more identical stuffed animals and rotated them each week. That way, when one got lost or left behind, we could pop out another one that was equally well worn and claim that the stuffed animal somehow made it home. We saved lots of tears. Story 76. I know of a guy who used the mother of all unethical, also dangerous, parenting hacks. He stole a batch of sleeping pills from his wife's workplace, a clinic, and he fed them to his kids to keep them quiet. This went on for several weeks until his wife discovered it. I heard that she had him reported and divorced. Story 77. I saw a post a while ago. Basically, if you want to take a nap, tell your kids you're taking a 30-minute nap. Then we're all going to clean the house. If your kids are smart, they won't wake you. Unless they're rule-abiding, then they may wake you up to remind you. Story 78. Told my kids that the reason some kids get more from Santa than others is because some adults don't believe in Santa. So buy presents for their kids and sign "From Santa." It's worked an absolute treat. Story 79. A friend's wife was a nurse who made triple time on holidays. She would work every Christmas Eve and Christmas, and they would pretend that Christmas was on December 26th. Their daughter never knew until she was older. Story 80. I told my daughter, who was 7 at the time, and a struggling reader, that guinea pigs only know that their owner loves them if the owner reads to the out loud for a minimum of 30 minutes a day. Story 81. My mom used to spray Febreze in my room and tell me it was nightmare spray and that it would prevent me from having a nightmare that night so I wouldn't be afraid of falling asleep. Story 82. The car engine doesn't work if there's bickering in the back seat. Also, if you don't wash behind your ears, the ear snails come out of them at night and poop on your face.